hopefully you hopped into the Menti. And so if not, go ahead and hop into that Menti and kind of be filling out that this or that. It's showing that I've got some people have participated. If you haven't yet, go ahead and do that. Give you just a second to hop in and complete. That's like 7 questions. And then I will go ahead and share those results. When it comes to 2-hour trainings, you guys are virtual learners. That's amazing to me. I'm so the opposite that it blows my mind that people want to be virtually, because I'm very much an in-person learner. All right, in-person training, do you prefer interactive or lecture? Same, definitely interactive. Ooh, books or movies? Look at that, tied. When it comes to hearing from subject experts, which do you prefer? Keynote speaker, interesting. Handwritten note takers, same. And during winter break, what are people doing? Family time, sand and sun. Jamaica, who's going to Jamaica? Is that you, Stephanie?
It's me.
Oh no, Veronica, you're going to
Veronica.
Jamaica?
I am, and I cannot wait. 1 week.
I bet. Some hiking going on. That sounds amazing. Slow mornings. Yes. I feel like I have one at life when I don't have to turn my alarm clock on. I'm like, this is it. This is, and it's like people say, what are you most excited about in retirement, which is 7 years away? I'm like, not having an alarm clock. That's the thing. That's the thing. Alrighty, friends. Well, thank you all so much for engaging in that this morning. We'll go ahead and kind of get started with our content, with our session today. Thank you all for being here. I know it's a busy time of year. People are might be traveling out of town and doing the things. So just a few reminders. Mic mindfulness, make sure that you're muted unless you want us to hear what you've got to say. Cameras on as much as possible. These sessions will be recorded, but as a note for while we're thinking of this, we will be having several videos shared today, and we can't repost those videos because of just certain rules. So when we post a recording, those videos will be cut out, but you'll know which ones we're talking about should you want to go back and view it later. Make sure you're joining from a computer. So either a laptop or an iPad even will work. You will not have full access to the things if you're on a phone. And then also just take breaks as needed. Just make sure you turn your camera and your mic off and let us know in the chat. A quick BRB is fine. Our norms, we welcome multiple viewpoints. We are courageous and we speak our truth. And we own our intentions and the impacts that come with those truths. We participate respectfully. We ask questions for clarification, and we honor our time together. So we're going to devote our attention to those speaking and sharing. Just a reminder about staying connected. Everything that you need lives in our Kentucky Leads SharePoint site. Of course, this presentation will be posted there afterwards as well. In case you missed it, last month we got to hear from Tara in the Division of IDEA Monitoring and Results, and she talked to us about dispute resolution. Today, we're going to do a quick check-in with the leadership team, and then we're going to go over training tips and techniques, and then we're going to share our thinking and ideas with our teammates. And I'm going to give it over to Mike to let him give us the updates for this month.
Thanks, Shasta. Good morning, everybody. Good to have you all with us. Just a reminder on the skills and competency checklist. We're going through that process now, and you'll be getting feedback on that in the not too distant future. One thing to think about is really what this is it looks at a person's kind of inherent professional character is what we're trying to get at. Do you attend class? Do you complete your assignments there in class? Do you attend your Saturday sessions? Things like that. And that's really vital for our evaluation. But I also want to say It's really important too to think about that in regards to not just your professional disposition, you as a leader, but it's also really important to think about that in regards to when you're in leadership positions, when you're hiring people. One's professional disposition, professional character, um, how they go about their work is vital. Do they show up on time? They're at school. Do they attend meetings or are they always late to meetings? When they're in meetings, do they engage? Um, these are the kind of things that you might not think about right now, but when you're in a leadership position and you're hiring people, they will be these things will be vitally important because you want to have a team around you, other colleagues that very high professional disposition. For example, as in a director role in a district or in a leadership role in a building, you rely on other people to work with you and to do an excellent job, or you can't do an excellent job. So a department chair, one of the things I remember back years ago, um, I inherited a department chair at my high school. So our chairs would typically run the special ed program there in the building. And there were a significant number of weaknesses this individual had, but they just kind of kept promoting them or continuing in this position. And I had been a school psychologist in the district for a number of years before I was the director of special education. And I knew this was a problem. And I knew that was going to be a problem once I took the director role because that person reported to me. So there are things you just need to consider when you're making professional hires, what that individual's professional character or disposition is a term we use, what it's like. Always be watching for those signs of, high quality individuals, high quality professionalism, etc., and will serve you well. So this competency skills checklist is really something that we look at to try and judge your all's professional disposition more for our evaluation purposes, but it's also important for you all to think about too, which is kind of why I'm giving you the long-winded explanation of what's going on here. Second thing, always remind you all, make sure you've got your advising taken care of for the spring semester, which is here in a few weeks after Christmas. Hopefully that's done. If not, please get on that ASAP. And then last but not least, when you're thinking about getting hired for director of special education, I know you all are aware of the Kentucky Educator Placement Service. That's an online database that the agency runs. And that's where you find education positions, but also leadership positions, directors of special ed. And there are also positions that come up too that are kind of non-traditional leadership positions. So I'd encourage you to look at that regularly. Even if you're not looking for a position right now, it gives you an idea of the larger perspective of what's out there, what's available, throughout the state, what kind of positions are there. Obviously, director of special education, but there are also from time to time assistant director roles, or again, just kind of hybrid roles. So I wanted to share that. I'll dump that in the chat here in just a minute. And that's all I have. Have a great morning. Thanks, Shasta.
Thanks, Mike. We also want to remind you about the OSIL Spotlight, of course. As you see great things happening in your districts or in your schools, make sure that you work with your DOS to fill out that form, because we love saying that. And I share with you guys every time. I love when I see a Kentucky Leads district or something from one of your schools. I think it's really exciting. And I'm always like, that's a Kentucky Leads person. Also wanted to share with you guys, you guys know I work for the Transition Education Unit, Family and Community Engagement Coordinator there, and we have a really awesome and exciting opportunity coming up for transition. So if you are middle or high school, we are accepting applications now. Now, here's what's really exciting about Transition 360 for Ed. The goal is to enhance the quality of transitioning programming, focusing on those areas of support for students with disabilities, of course. It's modules, so they're self-paced and they're asynchronous and they're online. So applicants are gen ed special ed teachers, counselors, job coaches, CTE teachers, district admin, right? And the thing I want to point out is if you can get a team to come along and do this with you, like team as in like 2, 3, 4, 5 people, that's the groups that are going to get first priority, because we know that when it comes to transition, it's never just like one person, right? It's not just the high school teacher who's going to make great things happen at that systems level. And so that's why the teams get priority. And just in time for the holidays. You won't get it for the holidays, though. Eligible participants receive a $750 stipend upon successful completion. And so we just wanted to let you guys know about that. Again, if you are with a team, you guys are thinking about how can we improve transition practices? How can we learn more about transition practices, but not go to, a 5-day training? This is a really great way to do that. And again, you guys could do it together, asynchronous, at your own pace. So encourage you guys to apply, get your teams together, get a partner, a peer, and you guys apply for this because it's a really exciting opportunity. All right, before we hop into content, anything we can clarify or any questions? All righty. Well, today you guys get to hear from me as your SHME, your subject matter expert. So if you hear me say SHME, that's what I'm talking about. I think it's such a fun word to say. And we are going to be talking about training tips for supporting adult learners. Mike had talked to you guys just a minute ago about leadership, and you guys know that when you're in these leadership positions, whether it's you are a leader in your building as a teacher, like you lead PLCs, you lead trainings for paras, whatever it might be, right? You're going to be doing some presenting and some facilitating. If you're in a district leadership position, if you're in a state leadership position, if you're in a regional leadership position, all of these times you're going to be given opportunities and sometimes required, right? It's part of the job to present, to share, to facilitate. And so what I wanted to offer you guys was just some practical tips that I've learned sort of along the way. I do this a lot for a lot of different, pieces of my job. I love it. I really do genuinely love this part of my job so much. And so just wanted to share with you guys some of the things, some of the tips that I've kind of picked up along the way, so that as you're in these positions, you're like, oh yeah, remember this. This is a good little tip. This is a good little rule to keep in mind. And so to kind of get us started before we jump into things, let's pretend that Kentucky Leads is going to send you a complimentary toolkit for all of your hard work this year. We heard from the parents in your building. We heard from the teachers and your principal and your superintendent said, oh my God, they're so amazing. Could you please send them something? We're like, yeah, totally. We'll send them a toolkit. Which toolkit would you sign up for? Would you choose for a crafting toolkit, a tinkering? I didn't know what other word to say there. So I said tinkering. So something with like wrenches and hammers, a cooking toolkit, a gardening toolkit, a travel toolkit, or a cozy toolkit. Cozy toolkit mean like hot chocolates and teas and fuzzy socks and fuzzy blankets. Like, what would you pick? Go ahead and drop that in the chat. Lots of ease. So many people just want to get out of town. I'm with you. Cozy friends, a crafting toolkit. Lots of ease. I don't think I see any D's and any C's. I think, oh, I see one C. Stephanie's got a C up there. Look at our personality shining through here. Well, we aren't sending you any toolkit because Grant's out of money, so we're not sending you anything like that. But we are going to give you a gift today, and that gift is the beginning of your very own training toolkit. And so let me tell you what I mean. So first of all, one of the things that I do, sort of a behind the scenes view here. One of the things that I do as a trainer, as a facilitator, is I keep my very own toolkit, right? And so anytime I either go to something where I'm actually like train the trainer kind of deal, or say I'm at CEC and I go to a super amazing presentation, right? I'm like, ooh, that was good what she did. That was a really good activity. I keep it. Like, I take it with me. I'll take little artifacts and little ideas. And so I have my very own training and planning workbook, so that as I'm preparing, I can be like, oh, what do I need? Oh yeah, I'm looking for maybe some like core activities. And so I'll just go over, to those core activities. And like, that way it's a place for me to keep all of this stuff. So I'm not reinventing the wheel every single time. And again, you guys know you get opportunities to go to the CECs and the CTEs and all the little lot, right? And you see great things. So it's just a good place to kind of keep that thing. Well, you guys, I have already started one for you guys. And this is just an outline. You are welcome to edit it however you want. You can add pictures, you can add different headings, you can totally get rid of what I have done and start your own. But I just wanted to kind of give you your very own toolkit to get started today so that you can start keeping those things. And this will also serve as our note-taking guide for today. And what I did was I sectioned it based on sort of our content objectives today, or some of the topics that we're going to go over today. That's how the sections are. But again, it's yours now. Do what you want. You'll have to make a copy of it. It'll prompt you, make a copy, say yes, and then it belongs to you. Okay. So now let me hop back into our slides here while you get that situated. Sometimes it'll prompt me and say, do you want to resume from where you started? And sometimes it doesn't. Weird like that. Okay. The other thing that you're going to need in addition to your toolkit is a scrap piece of paper for jot thoughts and points. So you're going to be prompted multiple times to say, jot that down, jot that down. And then I'm also going to say, give yourself a point. We'll talk about that in a second. So just give yourself a scrap piece of paper, a scrap doc, if you're one of the people who likes to type, whatever works for your brain, but you will need that. The other thing that we're going to be doing today is points. So again, grab a Post-it, a scrap piece of paper, back of a napkin, like J.K. Rowling style, whatever, something that you can keep some points on. And every now and then you'll hear me say, give yourself a point. And that can be, you can draw a star, you can do a tally, you can do a heart, you can do a Christmas tree, whatever you want, whatever fits your brain and your style this morning. At the end, we're going to have a prize for whoever has the most points. Our objectives today, pretty simple, two things. One, we're going to identify characteristics of adult learners because we can't teach if we don't know who we're teaching to. And then in addition, we're going to learn some practical training tips. We're going to do that through the movies. We're going to look through these practical strategies for supporting adult learners through the movies. What can we learn from some of our favorite holiday films? And so getting started, we're going to think about understanding adult learners. As we watch this clip, I want you to imagine Gimbals as a conference, as a PLC, as the training in your library. And I want you to be thinking about how are the adults, including Buddy, like training attendees? And how are the adults in this clip like trainers or presenters? Okay, so just kind of be thinking about how are the adults like attendees? How are they like trainers or presenters? Okay. You guys hear it? All right. So, how is Buddy? You probably jotted down some thoughts, right? Like how either Buddy and the other adults are like our conference attendees or presenters. I would love to have a couple of people just kind of share, and I'll kind of like get us started. So I thought about when Buddy's getting on the escalator, right? He's kind of apprehensive, like he watches and he watches. I know that as a presenter or as a trainer, like when you ask for volunteers, right? And people are like, like that happens, right? That especially happens when you ask for note takers. People are really resistant to be note takers. What are some other ways that you guys, and you can either drop it in the chat or just raise your hand, using the raise your hand feature. What are some ways that you thought adults or like conference attendees or trainers?
I'll share. Like when, sorry, I'm sick. But when Buddy walks in Gimbals for the first time, he's kind of taking it all in. And so whenever you go to a conference, usually there's vendors set up and you're kind of
Mhm.
just looking around and taking it all in. And you've got people who are like really, really excited about it. And then
Yes.
other people who are not so sure what's going on and just trying to get their bearings. So
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. I even thought about when, Buddy, I related to him as a trainer because when you know that you've got to present or train, it doesn't matter if you get hit by a car. You got to be there at 9 o'clock. You got to present to the people. So get hit by the car and just keep going, right? Like that's how we are. Anything else? Well, keep. Oh, yes. Yes, very good, Caitlin. With the testing the perfume, our vendors and our resources and giveaways aren't explained well or how to use them. Yes, absolutely. Thanks, friends, for engaging in that. If you wrote something down in your jot thoughts, give yourself a point. And if you shared in either the chat or out loud, give yourself another point. All righty. Now thinking about adult learning theory. So beyond just the movies and Buddy the Elf, when thinking about how adults learn, there's a popular theory um, called adult learning theory. I'm not going to go really deep on that topic, but I just wanted to share this with you guys that if it is something that you're interested in, there's lots of places you go. I listed like 4 here that I've used in the past to understand adult learning theory. And again, let me go ahead and say this too. This does not mean that it's a KDE approved resource and that KDE said you had to read this and go by that. That is not what I'm saying. These are just some things that I've read that I thought might be helpful to you. And so some of these are just like really quick little articles or blogs, and some are actually some like research articles written very researchy. Like, so again, if you are interested in adult learning theory, learning more about that, these are some good places that you might go to. Now, thinking about what adult learners need. So, thinking about the adults that we train and we present with and we support. In just a second, I'm going to share with you a whiteboard. And what I want you to do, it's going to look similar to this. I want you to choose the 3 that are most important to you as a learner, right? So, for you personally as a learner, if you had to pick the 3, what 3 would you pick that are most important to you? I want you to add a reaction to your choice. And the reaction, there's like a little heart down here. You grab my cursor. So if you click this little heart down here, that's going to give you some reactions. I'm indifferent to which reaction you choose. It's totally up to you, whatever floats your boat. I just want you to choose 3. So let me go ahead. Anything I can clarify before we hop into that whiteboard? Okay, then I will share our whiteboard with you guys. Oh, let me switch it over to the right one. All right. So go ahead and be adding the 3 that are most important to you as a learner. About 10 more seconds, maybe. So as you guys can see there, we have a lot of similarities, right? Some things that are really important to us as a group are opportunities to build competency, practical information, purposeful learning, wanting to understand the big picture. All of those things are important to most of us. And then some of these other things are also important to us individually. And so as you guys are working with your adult learners, again, that's how adult learning theory, you can be thinking about like, am I doing these things, or these things that I'm considering as I'm planning and preparing to work with the grown-ups that I am in charge of or that I'm supporting. Guys, I am so sorry about this, this goofiness with Teams today. And so thinking about adult learners, in addition to adult learning theory, high leverage practices, right? We're all familiar with high leverage practices. We're special ed teachers. But I think sometimes we forget that those HLPs, even though most of the research comes out around with students, there's a lot of connections between the HLPs and adult learning theory. And if you put those side by side, there's a lot of places where you could be able to draw some like parallel connections. And so what I want you guys to do, I'm going to give you just a second to either use the QR or click on the link. And yes, this is CEDAR's HLPs for students with disabilities, but I want you to be thinking about this, just this list. And this is not the complete list of adult learning theory, but like, what connections do you see? Just kind of be thinking about where you see some of those similarities or those parallel concepts. Give you just a minute to hop into there and to do that.
Shasta, I don't know if it's my computer, but it's
Mhm.
saying gateway timeout when I click on the link. I don't know if anybody else is having that problem.
Same for me,
Anybody?
Stephanie.
And did you? Okay, let me open it myself and let me see if I can just copy it and drop it for you guys. I don't even know what that means. Gateway timeout? I don't know. See if you can access that flyer through the link.
It opens for me.
Okay.
The link in the chat works.
Perfect. That's so goofy. I don't know why I did that. Once you've had an opportunity to look at what adult learners need from our whiteboard and look at that HLP list, if you see a connection, just drop that in the chat. Doesn't have to be a complete sentence or anything, so just be like, autonomy equals blank, or experiential learning equals blank. Thank you, Caitlin. Thank you, Rachel. Take a few more seconds. Yes, absolutely, Rachel. Again, thinking about as trainers, as presenters, if just like our audience, we want to be able to draw on what we know, right? We want to be able to say, what do we already know about this topic? what can we add to this topic? It's the same sort of concept that we use with our students. And so just kind of keeping that in mind as you go through setting your objectives, planning for your day, thinking about those HLPs in that adult learning theory can be really helpful, and just making sure you're not too far off track with what you're doing with your learners. So if you shared something in the chat or you added to your toolkit, if you've added to your toolkit so far, or if you've shared something in the chat, give yourself a point. And I will say, as we go, clicking on these links, you should be able to copy them, post them over to where you think they fit in your own Google toolkit. So if you've done either one of those things so far, give yourself a point. All right. So now one of the other practical tips is just using data. And of course, I'm going to say use the data, right? I remember as a first year teacher, I hated it when people said that. But now I'm like, no, but it's so important. So let's think about using data to determine need. And really this example is it's a story really that may help you make a connection between It's a Wonderful Life and data collection. So It's a Wonderful Life. How many of you are familiar with that movie? Like, just show me hands, thumbs, something, right? Familiar with that movie? Okay, so several of us. Well, initially, when it was released in 1974, it wasn't a commercial success. It actually fell into public domain in 74 due to copyright renewal failure. It was such a failure, they were like, we're not even going to renew the copyright on it. So this allowed TV stations to broadcast it without paying any royalties, and which led to its frequent holiday playing during the holiday season. Well, this widespread broadcasting generated a lot of viewership data, so TV networks could understand audience preferences, what their viewing habits were. Well, this data influenced programming decisions and advertising across multiple networks at TV stations and across advertising. And it made the film a really valuable source for understanding holiday viewing trends. And so I share that with you because as we think about preparing to support our adult learners, it's really important that we think about what do they need, right? We saw at the very beginning with adult learning theory that we all, like so many of us, checked something around the realm of like, is what I'm doing useful? What's the why? Is it meaningful? Is it purposeful? And so for your adult learners, going back to your data is going to be really helpful to you. And that data could be student outcomes, right? Are there gaps in the performance between our students with disabilities and our students without disabilities? If so, I'm going to ask why 5 times. And when I've got to that 5th why, like I've done that root cause, I've got a pretty clear objective. I've got a pretty clear target about what my teachers and the adults that I'm working with might need. I see, right? If you say, oh my gosh, it's only December and we've already had this many office referrals. We've already had this many suspensions. Well, that's very clear to me. Maybe where I want to step up and do some mid-year training based on that data. Teachers were surveyed to death, right? We get so many surveys, but we can take some of that data and say, what is it that our teachers might need? If you're in any sort of risk focus monitoring or you're in desk monitoring on any of those kind of things, SPP, APR, any of that is also a really good space to think about where you might offer some training. What other ideas? Do you guys have any other ideas around what sort of data you could use that would kind of like key you into the trainings or supports that your teachers, your staff, your colleagues might need? Any data I didn't think about or add here? You can just come off mute or drop it in the chat, either one. Ooh, good idea, Stephanie. in addition to thinking about your data and what your data is telling you might need to train on, you also have to think about need and capacity. And I mean that on two different ways. So what is teacher need, but also what is your capacity to train or present on that? And we have to think about the difference between presenter, trainer, and facilitator. You're likely going to get the chance or have had the chance to be all three of these, right? And it's important to think about, well, this is something that I could present on, or I could have someone come and present on. If the goal is just to simply provide some information, if your outcome is to entertain or inspire or motivate, then you need a presenter, right? So you, your staff, or someone that you might hire could say, you could bring in a presenter, right? You may need a trainer. If your goal is to actually increase learners' knowledge and skills, and you want them to acquire knowledge, objective-based specific outcomes, then you're going to need a trainer, someone who can train people to do those things. Also, you may need a facilitator, right? Maybe your goal is just to actually lead a group of other experts, a group of SMEs through a process. And your goal or your outcome that you expect is for them to inquire. You want extensive learning, then you need a facilitator. And that facilitation may go over a couple of days or a couple of sessions. And so thinking about what do they need and what is your capacity, right? Are you able to present on this topic? Are you able to train on this topic? Are you able to facilitate? If not, do you have maybe one of your consultants that you work with or a colleague that you work with who could maybe help you with that piece? Sometimes you might need help from an outside source, right? And so what you have on hopefully these QR codes and then these links is two different ways that you can grow capacity. And that could either be growing your capacity as a leader or growing the capacity of your team. So the Technical Assistance Network, that's the OSIL Technical Assistance Network. And what you're going to see on there are CERTACs, our RTCs. If you need somebody to train on Indicator 13, you need somebody to train on IEP development, specially designed instruction, co-teaching, right? Maybe you're like, with all of my other responsibilities, I don't have the capacity to train on that right now, but I know it's a need. Then you're going to reach out to your CERTAC, your RTC, and say, here's what my people need. How can we work together to help grow their knowledge on this? Another way to grow your own capacity, or maybe even like, again, you've got people on your staff who work with you who are training and they are presenting, the Bob Pike group. So I'm a big fan of Bob Pike. Again, I'm not endorsing it. I'm just telling you I'm a fan. They have really intensive trainings and certifications that you can go through, or they have monthly free webinars. And they are all about, here's how to get people to engage on online learning. Here's how to have a really good producer. Here's how to develop really good PowerPoints. It's all of those sorts of things. And in that resources section, again, all of those are free. There are some that you can buy, but they also have podcasts. So if you're a podcast listener and you're like, I've got 10 minutes in between work or 20 minutes in between my drive, it's a great podcast to put on. And it just gives you these little tips on how to grow your capacity as a trainer or a presenter or facilitator. And so you guys are welcome to hop into those. And actually, I'd like you to take about a minute, and I'll put some music on. So for about a minute, just explore, just play around in this sandbox, so to speak, hop in there and just thinking about what your current needs are and see if any of those could meet a need. Just exploring, add anything to your toolkit that you want to add.
FAFSA.
Mm-hmm.
So to get some of these Bob Pike group things, you have to put your email in. Is that correct?
Yeah, but there's no cost.
Okay.
So to sign up for the training, so like you give us your email, and that's where they send you the link. They have them monthly, So if you like set aside time monthly, they record most of them. But yeah, so the only thing it costs you technically is your email, but they don't spam you with like stuff either. So that's kind of good to know. All
Are the, doc-
righty.
are the
Go ahead.
documents, Shasta, on Bob Pike? Can you download any of those documents? Or do you have to have your email too? I'm looking at that now.
I think most of them require an email, and I think that's just sort of how they collect data. But
Sure.
yeah, most of them. But they once you give them your email, they send it to you in your email. They're really good too about giving you like free things for like, here's how this, here's this great website for creating X, Y, and Z, or here's how to get royalty free X, Y, and Z, or whatever. And usually, not always, but a lot of times at the end of their online webinars, they actually give away free stuff. Like, oh, here's a 1 month subscription to this, and here's a 1 month subscription. So that's kind of fun too.
I'm looking
All
at their
right,
case. I'm looking at
go
their
ahead.
case studies, and you can
Mhm.
download those without an email, submit an email. So some things you can download without the email, other things you'll need. So
Yeah,
just want to share that.
awesome. Thank you, Mike. If you reviewed one of the resources that we shared, give yourself a point. And if you added one or more to your toolkit, give yourself another point. All right, so thinking about developing clearer objectives, another super so thinking important. And when I work with other people, this is where I see that we struggle the most as trainers, including myself, is developing the super clear objectives. And it's just like we talk with our teachers, right? If you don't know what you're teaching, then it's very hard for your learners to know what they should be learning. And so, for the example of developing clear objectives, we have Ralphie, right? We all know what Ralphie wanted for Christmas. He knew exactly what he wanted. He wanted that official Red Ryder carbine action 200 shot range model air rifle, right? That is exact. He knew what he wanted. He didn't want a BB gun. He knew the exact one that he wanted. And so when it comes to developing those objectives, we need to be like Ralphie. Our objectives need to be actionable, attainable, and applicable. Okay. And so here's what I mean for those words. In terms of actionable, they need to be very clear and very concise. They need to be measurable, right? So if you were going to do like a post assessment and a pre assessment, you could actually measure those things and they need to be doable, right? We'll talk about that here in just a second. They need to be attainable. So if you know you only have a 1 hour PLC, you're probably not going to do a whole lot of extensive research. If you know that you have like a full day in person training, you can be like, I can actually get a couple of things accomplished with that full day in person. Thinking about logistics with your time frame, your space, your audience, all of those things impact your objectives and what you're going to be doing. Are they applicable? Again, do they fit your learners' needs? Going back to what we all said, that it was important for us to know why and that what we were doing was meaningful, right? So again, does what you're doing fit your learners' needs? And thinking again about, is this going to be applicable to my audience? What my new teacher needs may not be the same as what my seasoned teacher needs, and it may not be the same as what my co-teaching teams need. So again, just thinking about who you're teaching to. And thinking about those clear and concise objectives and knowing exactly what it is that you're training on. So a helpful tool for me is Bloom's taxonomy. Again, something we use for our students and we teach our teachers, right? I think Bloom's is really good, and it's a really good tool to think about, what is it that I want them to do, right? Do I want them to just grow knowledge? Do I want them to analyze? Do I want them, so thinking about what it is you want them to do, and then using some of those keywords from Bloom's to help you develop your objectives. So I'm going to give you a minute to just hop into Bloom's and just think on, right? Maybe jot down some thoughts around how you could use Bloom's to help you develop session objectives. All righty. Another tip for thinking about developing objectives, oftentimes we're like, but there's so much they need to know. There's so many things we need to know. I only have an hour. I only have an hour and a half. What are all the things that I can tell them? So this is something that sort of like has like a running, it's like a running phrase in the back of my mind anytime that I'm doing trainings or presentations. It's need to know, nice to know, where to go. Totally give credit to Bob Pike Group for this. This is totally their phrase, and it's one of my favorite things that they've ever taught. And so thinking about what do my learners need to know? There's your objectives right there. And need to know means 6 times in the next 30 days. Are they going to use it 6 times in the next 30 days? If so, it's a need to know. What would be nice to know, but not immediately relevant? That's your nice to know. And a way to think about that is 6 times over 60 days, right? So if it's something that they might use or could need 6 times over the next 60 days, then it could be a nice to know where to go, right? So these are things like earlier, I shared with you guys some resources on adult learning theory. That's just something that's kind of nice to know, right? You might use it later. Maybe you're somebody who really likes to dig in deep into content in order for it to be applicable for you. And we do have learners like that. So that's like a nice thing. You are where to go. Just give them the tools, give them the resource. We weren't going to spend, 10 minutes on each of those resources. And so this is just something that really kind of helps me narrow down what is it exactly I need to give them in the next 2 hours, the next hour and a half, and the next full day thing. Need to know, nice to know, where to go. For the where to goes, this is something I've got good feedback on, is anytime that I have those where to goes and it's like a list of things or a list of resources, I'm like, I utilize this. I want them to have this as a reference. What I do is I give them this. This is just an example of a sheet that I give people. I call it your QR toolbox or your QR sandbox. I put it all on a page. That way they can click it, they can access it, they can explore in it. But it's just something that they can kind of take with them should they want to go back to it or later. All right, if you haven't checked your email or looked at social media since we started our session, give yourself 3 points, okay? So if you haven't checked your email or social media, 3 points for you right now.
Brutal. This one brutal, Shasta.
Look, I already know how adult learners are, including myself, Mike.
I want to know if anybody's getting any points here, Shasta.
All righty. Next tip is to plan and design for effectiveness. Who can tell me, drop it in the chat, what is this picture from? Or whose battle plan is this? Who does this battle plan, or what movie is it from, really? Because it tells you who it is. There you go, Home Alone. Yes. So just like Kevin, when it comes to our trainings, we need to make sure that we plan and design for effectiveness. Kevin knew exactly. He knew what was coming and he was ready for it, right? He had a plan. And so as you guys are thinking about your trainings, again, I know you guys already do this, but these are just some like additional maybe tips. So when it comes to your outline, thinking about your objectives are answer the what, right? Your objectives are your content, right? And always be doing content. That's your need to know. So that's kind of where how I think about my objectives. Have you intentionally given engagement opportunities? And are those engagement opportunities appropriate for if you're doing virtual versus in person? So what are they doing like to meet the objectives? And this is something that I've heard from Bob Pike as well. Whoever is doing the writing or the talking is doing the learning, right? So that's really important, something to think about. And then reinforcement, right? Just like our students, we like to be reinforced. So how will you reinforce positive learning behaviors? How will you reinforce content with your activities, your reflections, and your conversations? So here's the thing that, again, kind of just like has like a playlist in the back of my brain, 10, 2, 5, 2. So when we think about pacing, 10 and 2, 5 and 2. So it's not just for driving, but also when you are presenting, for every 10 minutes of you talking, you need to give them 2 minutes of activity. Now, if you're online, it's a little bit more challenging. So it could just be things like participate in the chat, add this to a toolkit, hop onto this website, right? So it's not just you talking at them, you're actually giving your audience something to do. That's the 5 and 2. So the 10 and 2 is in person, the 5-2 is virtual. That our brains get distracted, not because we're bad, but because we're human very quickly. And so every 10 minutes, have 2 minutes of activity. Every 5 minutes, you should have 2 minutes of activity. And again, just be continually building your toolkit when it comes to yourself as a trainer. Keep templates, copy those templates, put them into your trainer toolkit. If you find a resource, if you're like me, you take pictures of really good slides when you're at conferences, bam, they're in my toolkit. And so just collect those artifacts and put those in there so that you are spending not spending as much time on that when it's time for you to plan. All right, if you added a note or a resource from the Home Alone section, right, around designing and planning, give yourself a point. All right, it is almost 11, so I want us to pause and have a break. Let's do 10 minutes. Let's come back at 11:04, and then we'll hop into Critical Friends. So we'll be back at, oh, go ahead, Mike.
I just want to say, if I could say something once we get back from the break, just a couple minutes. Thanks.
Okay, yep. 11:04, friends. Alrighty, friends, it is 11:04. So if you could hear my voice, it is time to come back. Give us just a minute here to get kind of settled back in.
Bueller.
Bueller. Bueller.
We're hitting all my
Alrighty.
favorite movies today, guys. These are
Good.
all my favorite movies.
Great. Well, I'm glad and hope you like this one too, Becca. Our next practical strategy that we're going to think about is having a critical friend. And so as we watch this clip, and we're not going to watch the whole thing because it's kind of long, but we're going to kind of watch about half of it. I just want you to, here's what I want you to think about as you watch. What do you notice about Clark and his critical friends? And we're going to say his critical friends are his wife and his kids, right? So just what do you notice about this interaction? Jot that down and be thinking about how it relates to you as a trainer. All right. So thinking about Clark, right? So just thinking about Clark. If you have a Clark in your life, professionally or personally, give yourself 2 points. We're not gonna call them out. We're not gonna say who our Clarks are. Give yourself 2 points. Alrighty. And so as you watch that clip, you were probably able to pick up on some things about having critical friends when it comes to preparing for our presentations, or even a critical friend who sits in on our presentations and trainings to give us feedback afterward. And so when I say having a critical friend as you plan, prepare, present, train, all of those things, here's what I mean. I mean someone who has attended trainings, right? Someone who has been to different conferences, who's been to different trainings, and they can say, hey, here's a different way to do that, or this actually will work, thinking about your audience, thinking about your time frame. It's also really helpful to have someone who has actually trained or presented, right? Because they're going to be able to say, in my experience, here's what happens when, right? This one is super important. You need someone who doesn't mind to tell you the truth. And I should have put in there that you can hear the truth from, right? Because that's important too. Because sometimes people can tell you the truth, but you don't like it because you don't like them, right? So it's important that to have someone who can tell you you're doing too much, right? In the words of my 16-year-old mom, you're doing too much, right? Like you have too much content for an hour and a half, or you did not meet your objectives. This is what you said you were going to do, but you are not doing that. You've got them sitting for so long. And also someone who can help you improve, right? So not only is it someone who can say, you're not meeting this objective, that the activity is going to fail, but someone who could say, try it this way instead. I saw this, try that instead. So just make sure you have a critical friend as you think about here's your planning for your presentations and trainings. And even I actually have a couple of these at work. So sometimes I'll say, hey, will you come? This is a brand new thing I'm teaching. It's a brand new thing I'm doing. Come sit in. And that way you can tell me if it's not working while we're going so I can adjust as we go. And so those friends are really important. So if you were back from break on time, give yourself a point. If you were back at 11:04, give yourself a point. All right, so our next practical strategy. This is my absolute favorite Christmas movie. We had a debate at work about if this is a Christmas movie. You will not convince me otherwise. So as you're watching this scene from Harry Potter, I want you to think about what are some moments that make this scene magical, and how can you relate them to your training? How can you relate them to yourself as a trainer? Alrighty. I almost thought about let me just watch Harry Potter and just we could pretend that the whole thing's related to training, but I didn't do that. So if you added to your jot thoughts, and I'll give you a second to do that now, thinking about what scenes from that movie have to do with yourself as a trainer, as a presenter, give yourself a point. And one of the things I think when we think about with trainings and presenting is we want to make sure that we use our teacher magic. I genuinely believe all teachers have magic, right? Really good teachers, they have that teacher magic. They have instructional magic, they have engagement magic, and they have connection magic. And so when you think about your instructional magic, right, that what you had as a teacher, what you have as a teacher, there are things that you use that make your classroom experiences and your instructional experiences really amazing for your students. Do the same thing for your adult learners. A colleague of mine the other day, we are improving. We're working on our training practices at KDE. And we joked and said, and this was like post a Bob Pike session, and somebody said, it's almost like somebody took our fun card away when we started working at KDE. I don't know what happened. And so what I'm saying is don't let anybody take your fun card as a trainer, right? Use that teacher magic that you have. Think about those UDL principles. Think about how you can scaffold to support the needs of your learners. Provide explicit instruction. How can you provide modeling either from yourself or peer-to-peer modeling? And don't forget about those movement breaks, right? Don't forget about those opportunities to stand up and move every so often. Don't forget about your engagement magic. Again, as teachers, like you're so good at keeping students engaged. I mean, you're like a little magician up there, like this amazing, like Oscar-winning entertainer sometimes, right? And how do we do that? We engage our students' brains through games. We engage them through music, movement, visuals, props, and prizes, right? That little competition, right? And so again, don't hesitate to use those things that you found effective with students. Again, thinking about adult learning theory, but how can you use that same magic with your adults, the grown-ups that you're supporting? And then finally, just that connection magic. Can you give them peer-to-peer learning opportunities? Can you give them partner learning opportunities? Can you do small group? Can you do large group and individual responses? And I highlight that individual responses because of the next bullet where we say a safe environment from the very beginning. Anytime that you know that you're going to have those engagement opportunities, some people are like extroverts and they don't care who's in the room. They're going to chat, they're going to talk. I am not naturally dispositioned that way. I'm very introverted. And so I need to have the opportunity to think about what I'm going to say before I say it. Even if it's with strangers, even if it's something that seems somewhat trivial, I have to have a moment. So give your learners those opportunities to reflect or to come up with what they're going to say before they are expected to say it. And a really easy way to create that safe learning environment is asking non-threatening light questions from the beginning. You guys have seen that in leads, I ask things like, what do you prefer? What's your, favorite this? What's your favorite that? Those are non-threatening questions, but they slowly build the momentum for getting into deeper conversations. So just something to kind of keep in mind. So here's what I want you to do right now. I want to give you, I think I got like 2 minutes here. Think about some memorable magic that has happened during a training, either you've led or you've attended, right? So something that you're like, that was so good. That was really good. I felt like I learned something. I felt inspired. Go ahead and take about 2 minutes to just like sit with that, think about that, and add that to your trainer toolkit right now. And then if you think something is like extremely amazing, go ahead and drop that in the chat as well. So let's take about 2 minutes to just think and add to our toolkit. So one of the things too that I'll say is this is particularly important within the facilitation piece, I feel like, is that if you need people to get a job done, you have to give them time to do it. We just don't do homework as adults unless we're in a class, right? Like a sort of university class. You guys have probably experienced this where you're like, okay, we're going to work on this project. Everybody on their own free time do X, Y, and Z, right? Most of us just don't. We just don't have time to do that. So let's say you're working on developing a how-to sheet or some sort of guidance document for your district leaders or whatever. If you need your people to get that thing done, then give them time in the meeting to do it. One, they're going to be able to feed off of each other, share ideas as you go. But I think in addition, you can ensure that the thing gets done. And so that's really important. So you guys have noticed I've given you like a couple minutes here to add this, a couple minutes here to add that. And that's just intentional to say, like, this is important. Here's the time to do it. All right, some things to share in the chat. A birthday lineup for parent cognitive coaching training. I love that. Training where there's a student panel. Yes. Oh gosh, yes, absolutely. I love student panels. All right, thanks for sharing, friends. If you added to your toolkit, give yourself a point. If you shared something in the chat, give yourself a point. All right, we are coming close to the end here. And one of the last things I want to talk about is purposeful slides. And like the Grinch says, we need to cut the noise, noise, noise. I couldn't find one that had sound to it, so I just did the sounds for you. And when I'm talking about purposeful slides, I got two examples here, right? So which do you prefer? The one on the left, effective training strategies, or the one on the right, create your own toolkit? Just drop it in the chat, left or right. Which one do you prefer as a learner? Caitlin said she prefers the right. Right. Obviously, right. That's the one that we prefer. Why do you prefer it? So, Natalie, you said you preferred the one on the right. Why? Why do you prefer it?
What works for you or is appropriate for you may not be for me. So when I can take what you've given me and create my own, it's more applicable to me.
Gotcha.
It makes more sense for me personally.
Wonderful. Caitlin, why did you choose the right?
Just visually, I can read it and then take it instead of having to literally read through every word on the left-hand side.
Absolutely. But how many of us have sat in a presentation where we get the one that's on the left, right? Where it's like so many words on a screen. It's like a dictionary just like threw up on the screen, right? That is not effective for a couple of reasons. One, usually your audience is either going to read what's on the screen or they're going to listen to what you say. So decide which one you need them to do and then give them the opportunity to do that. But I think secondly, thinking about what I consider it's like the back of the room, right? So if I was, say, in a training room and I was in the back of the room, which one of these am I going to be able to read? Well, it's going to be the one on the right, right? I'm not going to be able to read what's on the left. And so coming back to that, like, need to know, nice to know, where to go. Again, what do my, the same content is on these slides, effective training strategies, right? But we've got two different ways of approaching that, where one is like, here's all the things. This PS, that's what AI generated for me, was effective training strategies. I use AI all the time. I'm going to let y'all know right now. So over on the left, that's what AI said. So I just put that up there. But that's not effective for you guys as learners. And so on the right, it's creating your own toolkit. So just a couple of tips that I've learned oftentimes the hard way. One idea per slide, right? So if we think about those two slides that we just saw, one idea per slide. That's going to give you back of the room visibility, and it's going to keep your pacing a little bit better. Do not forget about ADA accessibility, making sure with colors, with images, with all of those things, make sure that you think about that. Again, visibility, readability. Use images. Pictures speak 1,000 words. They can set the tone for what you're trying to say. So don't hesitate to use those images. Just think about accessibility. Develop your cheat sheet, right? I have a PowerPoint template. I have a training template. I have a facilitation template. All of those things, so create those and use those as a cheat sheet as you go. And again, AI, like coolest thing. You can, whatever AI you use, you can say, give me some learning objectives around, say, IEP development. It'll give you a list. And then I could say, take these learning objectives and relate them to Christmas movies. And AI is like, here you go, right? And so it doesn't mean that you have to go with it exactly, but it does maybe help you think about some things you hadn't thought about before. All right. So here are some of my favorite tools when it comes to slides. Slides Go, you get so many free a month. And so they're super cute. They're super fun. You can pick themes, you can pick a type. They have one pagers, all kinds of things. So Slides Go is really good. If you work for KDE and you're presenting publicly, you have to use this KDE one. You can't use the fun, cute ones. But if you're ever in a group facilitation with me, you're going to see some really cute slides probably from Slides Go. Pixabay is a good resource. So all of these little sound clips that I've been using down here are from Pixabay. So if you need those timed, those little timers, both visually and auditorily, these are free. You just, click right copy, put it in there. It's super easy. They're royalty free. That's what's nice about them, is that YouTube won't sue you for using them. Another thing is Canva. Canva has really cute, if you need a one pager, PowerPoints, and they're getting much better about working with teams. The only thing about Canva is, like, usually they're really great stuff, is there is a cost to it, but there is a free version and you can still get a lot of stuff for free. But again, just some really good resources in terms of creating handouts, creating PowerPoints, those sorts of things. I'm going to give you, until our timer runs out here, an opportunity to look through these, to explore these a little bit, and then see if you want to add any to your toolkit. About 20 seconds, friends. Alrighty, as we come back from that activity, if you like to use, like something that you use a lot when you're preparing for presentations and trainings, drop that in the chat, and that's something that we can add to our toolkits. Thank you, Caitlin, for sharing that. All right. If you explored one of the resources, give yourself a point. All right, let's hop into breakout rooms. So what we're going to do in breakout rooms today is just talk about your toolkits. You guys have been building them as you go. I know for sure that you guys have some ideas and some thoughts and some resources and some feedback that you have that you've either learned as a presenter or an attendee. And so those are some things I want you to discuss in chat room. So what was new for you? What was meaningful for you from today's presentation? What tools or resources would you add? And I see, Mike, you have your hand up.
Thanks, Jess. I just want to say a quick thing. I kind of call sessions like this, sessions like this have the car dealer effect. It's like when you go shopping for a car and then you go in the showroom, it's like, wow, all these bells and whistles and things that can be really amazing. So I encourage you to really kind of think about, what are one or two things that you could use in the short term or immediately out of the things you've learned here today that could be really effective. And it struck me when at the very beginning of the session, you all mentioned the comparison between face-to-face versus virtual training, and a little more people were kind of geared toward virtual. That's really where things are going, especially when the next generation comes up. Face-to-face will always have a place, but the reality is virtual is just continuing to grow. And so that's just another thing I wanted to point out. Third thing is you can use these training pieces here in so many different ways in your district for your staff. Or if you're in a support agency, a CERTAC of some sort, or another agency, to get this information out. I used to pay teachers to stay after school. And there's some times where that's still necessary. But now you've got a setup like this where you can actually record this information. Hey, we're going through a policies and procedures training. It's going to be a 45-minute to an hour. I've recorded it. I need all of you, my teachers or administrators, to complete this in the next 2 weeks. And you could even put together a little quiz in there just to make sure they paid attention to it versus keeping them over. So there's a lot of different ways you could even use something like this for your parent trainings to get this information out to parent. Here's what we're doing. And by recording it like we're doing here today, you get the voice narration, which I think is really, really powerful in addition to the slides. So I just kind of wanted to share a couple things there to think about because as a leader in your district or another agency, these tools here are really, really powerful. This medium is really, really powerful and allows you to multiply your time in so many different ways. So right. Thanks, Shasta.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. That's really good. That's really good feedback. So as you guys hop into your rooms again, just kind of be thinking about what are you taking away with you? What's something you added? What would you share? And then what was anything new to you? Hopefully it was. Hopefully something was new to you. Becca, will you whisk us away to breakout rooms?
Yes, ma'am. I'm opening.
We'll do
them now.
about 10 minutes in rooms, friends.
Magic should be occurring now. Natalie's gonna stay with us.
I'm really
you've
sorry.
seen the emails that I've shared with our friends in OET. Hopefully we can get that sorted out before January. But you have our attention. What would you like to discuss today?
I'm very interested, like just how you kept our attention and adding those things in, thinking about how I present, even in the role I'm in now. I have to do PLCs and things like that with my teachers and making it a little more engaging for them instead of just giving the information. And I do that a lot because it's just another, I got to get in here, I got to get this done kind of thing. But being more engaging. And then I love that you said you use AI all the time because I do as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I love how it evolves in my brain because I've never thought, compare this to a Christmas movie. How could I just have never done that before. Song lyrics play in my head a lot when people say things, it will often spur a song. So I do that a lot just because that's how I think. But I just thought it was interesting that AI could do that for me too. But I was interested in hearing what some other people were saying they were taken away too, just because it's nice to hear in different roles, whatever. But as a consultant, it's different than what maybe a teacher is seeing or something like that. So,
Natalie, I'm going to clue you in on what else AI can do that I just discovered last week. I asked it to make me a shopping list for Trader Joe's for one person using 2 frozen meals and 1 pre-made salad, focusing on protein. And it made me a shopping list. It gave me protein. It gave me an estimated cost. I mean,
Right.
anything you
Amazing.
can imagine, it can help.
I use it a lot. Like I said, I'm a consultant and I have 7 teachers, and they're all 3 years or less in the field, and only one actually has a degree in special education. So constantly trying to help them understand, like, what is SDI? What would be a good goal? And so we've actually started using snippets from just as training, not necessarily even writing it, but like, hey, let's look at the PLEP for this next meeting that we have, and taking out student names. And I'll input literally from a evaluation, taking out the student's name and say, what would be a good goal to write here? And it will explain SDI for this specific goal. It will do it. It'll even give you a rubric. If you're going to base your goal off of a rubric, it will give you the rubric. And again, we've not actually inputted it into an IEP yet, but just showing teachers like, this information means this, because they've never even seen it before. I have one that literally has been doing education in general for a month and a half. Like, that's it. No other formal training at all. So she doesn't understand evaluation process at all, which she shouldn't. So
Right.
it's really neat though. AI has been a great tool as long as we use it right and make sure that it's appropriate. Like, we don't want to just blindly copy things and put them and think that that's accurate if it truly isn't what we are seeing with our kiddos. But anyhow,
Are your PLCs, do y'all meet in person or do you virtual like this?
We are in person. So I PLC with the entire school every Wednesday. I'm just lucky enough to be a consultant located in our middle school. So my office is there, and every Wednesday we PLC. All of my special educators go to the general education PLCs. So I'm in there hearing that information so that if they have questions or concerns, I can kind of help guide in that way too. But then we PLC once a month as a special education department in my building. But this came from a PLC with my director at the board office. We go once a month. Once we leave there, we plan ours for our specific building. But they're all in person.
Gotcha. Hey, when you meet with, or your director meets with teachers, is it typically during the school day, or do you ever keep them over after school?
So when I go and meet with Miss Carmen at the board office, it is usually from 2:30 to 3:15. And now our elementary schools get out. Some get out at 2:30, some get out at 2:45. So they're kept over just a little bit. And then my building actually doesn't get out until 3 o'clock. And so I guess you would say about 15 minutes when I meet with her. But when we do in our building, we do it during their planning periods. So it is not there. We at Graves County Middle School, we haven't had an after school meeting the entire school year. So
That's good. That's good. Yeah, everybody's time is precious, even more so than before.
now that doesn't mean that PBIS doesn't meet after school, and
Sure.
SEDM, those kinds of things, those extra committees will. But as far as a faculty meeting or even a PLC, those are done within. That's just all of our content areas have common planning. And then our special ed department is actually content specific. So I have a guy who goes to only math So his planning is actually on math planning time. And so they can co-teach. We've got a co-teaching initiative going on, and so they can plan co-teaching outside of obviously PLC time. But we have an ELA specific for 8th grade, so they go to 8th grade ELA, PLC, stuff like that.
That's so respectful and considerate.
I would like to say that I had that idea, but I did not. Well, my administration, I will forever brag about Grace County Middle School. Like, I love that place, but they are just very thoughtful about family time and honoring that, and making sure that when you leave school that you are leaving school and you are going to be with your family. Now there are some times when you have to do stuff at home, but very, very mindful of there's more to life than this job, and making sure that you're spending it the way you want to spend it. So very, very good admin.
Wow.
That's great.
They've set up the schedule well to take care of that too, to facilitate that idea.
I would love
We
to
should-
see if other districts would pick that up, pick up that practice, because teachers are never, educators are never going to make as much as they are worth, in my opinion. Our economy is just not set up that way to prioritize that. But the nickel and diming that happens to teachers in terms of time and in terms of resources, time being the one that happens the most, that could be a way that districts, or that not just districts, but everybody really prioritizes teachers, in that when you leave and you're not working off the clock.
Right. I think, well, I don't think, I know, our principal and assistant principal both have very active families, and like they play sports and they go and are parts of drama. And when Mr. Miller, our principal, was sitting down and doing a couple hours of homework, he has 3 girls, and sitting down and doing homework, and he's like, so we couldn't go golf because we had to do XYZ. He said, this will not happen for my students and my teachers in the building. He's just very adamant. We send home, as far as homework goes, 1 assignment weekly, and it's math. And the assignment is that, like, 5 questions are from day 1, 5 questions from day 2, and it's a bonus. So if you don't do it, it's okay. It's not due till Friday. You get it on Monday. If you want to work ahead, they always post a video where they solve 3 of the 5 problems for you. Like, if you're confused and you need to walk through that, so parents aren't like trying to figure that out, because if you're a math person, sorry, I'm not. We all know I'd be spending hours trying to just figure out how to teach my kid, how to do it. And so just making sure that we're mindful in what we're asking people to do outside of the building. And he's just very passionate about that. And so now our elementary schools and our high school do not do the same. Our middle school he's just very serious about making sure that when we leave, we have family time. We can do what we want to do. Maybe it is go hunting. I don't know. It doesn't have to necessarily always be what he's doing, but what I'm wanting to do, I can do. So.
Becca, will you go ahead and start bringing people back?
Yes. I
Thanks
wish
for
they
talking
could have
with
all
me.
just heard what you shared. Oh, I didn't give them the.
I'll give them a minute warning.
I didn't give them the minute warning, so now
No
they're gonna
minute
have, like,
warning.
whiplash from
virtual.
coming
I
back
was
in
like, it's
the
always like a
room.
port key. That's the little
Their
virtual port
equilibriums are
key.
going to be out of whack.
And Natalie, if you ever want to watch, wasn't it you who said you hadn't seen the last 2 Harry Potter movies?
Well, I've never seen Harry Potter, nor have I seen Christmas Vacation.
Okay. Well,
I was just saying, like, the last 2 clips, which I was able to find. I think I was saying I wasn't able to. They didn't play auto like you were doing, but I was able to find them to watch. But I've never seen either movie.
we can still be friends. It's fine. But if you ever want a partner to just like binge Harry Potter with you, just let me know. And I promise I won't quote out loud too often. Alrighty, friends. Thank you guys so much for engaging in some conversations during your breakouts. And so I would just like to kind of hear from you. And so we're really, see if you don't do it for me, let's do it for Natalie, because of all of her tech issues, she couldn't get to a breakout room, so she had to listen to us drone on for like I don't know, ever. So share some things that came out of breakout rooms for Natalie.
Shasta, I also couldn't get to a breakout room. I just stayed like out in cyberspace maybe, but when I came back, you all fixed my camera. So
Okay, well, so for Stephanie
it was
and
weird.
Natalie, for both of them, what were some things, some things that just kind of stuck from today's learning, something you added to today's learning? You hear from at least one person.
The the 10-2-5-2
Mm-hmm.
resonated with me, just kind of thinking, because I do lots of trainings, because I wear lots of hats in my district, and so I hadn't really thought about that, but I think that's a good way to, keep everybody engaged, maintain their attention. But I had just never thought of it in those terms. So that's something that I took away.
Awesome. And if you ever get the opportunity to do a Bob Pike training, they actually talk about the science behind that and just how squirrely our brains are. And again, just because of who we are in 2024 as humans. And so they talk about the science around like how long the brain can actually attain to task, or how long you can pay attention. It is surprisingly short for adults. It is surprisingly short. And so I'm glad that you found that helpful. It's just kind of like a good rule of thumb. Anything else? Alrighty, well, if not, here's your action step. Be mindful. So as you're in trainings, as you're watching presentations, just be mindful of those things that you could add to your very own trainer toolkit. Continue to add to your toolkit, kind of keep this bookmarked. Again, you can edit it, revise it however you want, but just keep a space of good ideas, good resources. If you see something really great, you're like, you know what, my leads people would really like that. Share it in the discussion board. If you find here's free PowerPoints, here's a way to gamify something, here's what AI told me would be a really great thing. Drop it over in our SharePoint site so that we can share those and people can add those to their own toolkits, and I can add it to mine as well. Before we go, what can we clarify, answer, or share? Not hearing anything. Don't forget about your evaluation. Don't forget to complete that. And since I was the presenter, I want you guys to not say good job. I want you to tell me exactly what you liked and what you didn't like, what worked for you. This is really important for me. I do this a lot, and you guys are a safe space for me. So tell me what worked and what didn't work, because I really want to know that information. It's going to be really helpful to me. All right. Let me go back to here so you can have an opportunity to get that open if you need to, because I really want your feedback. And don't be afraid of hurting my feelings, because you won't. If you have already opened the survey, give yourself a point. You don't have to have completed it yet, because I know you're going to be really thoughtful about the comments that you're going to give. So it's okay if you haven't completed it yet. But if you
I love this strategy.
Thank you. If you plan on providing meaningful feedback, and we know what that means because we worked with students, right? We know what meaningful feedback is. If you plan on providing meaningful feedback, give yourself another point. All right, so in the winner is, go ahead and tally up your points. Type how many points you have, but do not hit enter. So tally them up, count them up, put it in the chat, but don't hit enter. All right, on the count of 3, you're going to hit enter as to how many points you had. You ready? 1, 2, 3. Look at this. Looks like Caitlin's in the lead with 18. I had a couple people had to hop off. Okay, Caitlin. Anybody else? Whoever adds last, everybody's going to think that you're cheating just to see what the highest total was so that you could add to that. 19. Nobody believes you. All right, Caitlin, what is your favorite shippable movie snack? So don't say like a hot dog, or as my son calls them, glizzies. He's 16, because I cannot ship you a glizzy. Don't say nacho cheese. I can't ship that to you. What is your favorite movie snack, Caitlin?
Oh my goodness. I love Sour Patch Kids.
Sour Patch. Okay, I'm going to ship you
Oh,
in the next couple of weeks some Sour
that's so
Patch
nice.
Kids.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. I'll let you guys know, at a recent training I did at CEC, we had, some really cool prizes out on the table. But I randomly threw in some of those Christmas tree cakes, right? Because like, people like these. I thought people were gonna like fight each other over those Christmas tree cakes, like legit. Like when I was like, oh, and some of the prizes are this. When I said Christmas tree cakes, there was like a row of like first year teachers up in the front. They were like, yes, man, they were like doing the point. So just be creative with your prizes. Our next session is Saturday, January 25th. So we will see you guys again on the 25th. If there is nothing else, thank you all so much. We appreciate you all. We hope this was meaningful. We hope you have a great weekend and a great winter break, and however you celebrate. We hope it's amazing.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
everybody.
Good Christmas.
Bye.
Bye.
I need to stop the recording.
You hit stop.